Good afternoon, 10A. I hope that you're all well. So today we're going to look at a little bit more with speaking. So I need you to jump on to GAC 001 and we're going to be down at page 117. So GAC 001, page 117. So please open so that you can go through this with me. So we're going to talk about our individual oral presentation. I'm not going to give you the presentation today. We're going to do that in a couple of days. We're just going to start preparing ourselves for what we need to know about individual oral presentations. So you're going to be doing this for assessment event number 2 for 001, and that will occur when I finally get back from Australia, or we might have to do it using Skype or some of the video format. Okay, so we've already covered all of this because we're actually doing endangered animals in 002. Your topic is actually going to be an endangered animal. And as you've already completed a lot of research on your individual endangered animal, that's the information that we're going to use for this presentation. So the great thing is that you don't have to do a variety of presentations, or you don't have to do a variety of research. We can use the research that we've already done. Okay, so if we think about an oral presentation, we need to think about what the structure is going to be. And similar to a description, and certainly similar to an essay, you're going to have to do a presentation that has various parts. Generally, it has 3 parts: an introduction, which introduces what you're talking about, the main body, and the conclusion. So the introduction is very simple. It introduces your animal. So you would introduce, this is my animal. It is a hippopotamus. It's a large animal that lives in Africa and it is endangered. This doesn't give you all of the information. It simply introduces your animal or introduces your topic to make sure that the audience are interested. So it needs something which we call a hook. Okay, I'm just going to give some notes for you and I'd like you to write these down. So in an introduction, we have a hook. So a hook is the same as if you go fishing. You need a hook to get the fish and reel them in to keep them with you. And it's the same as an audience. You want to hook the audience and keep them with you. So a hook will be an interesting or a shocking statement. So something that interests the audience. So when we're talking about endangered animals, a hook might be something like there used to be 1 million and now there are only 13. So that would be quite a shocking thing. A hook could also be that dolphins are quite similar to humans in their behavior. Okay, so their relationships, they've got a mum and a dad and children, and they live in groups, and there's different groups, and they communicate with each other. They like to eat together, they speak with one another, they feel happiness and pain, very similar to humans. So these 2 things are 2 different ways of having a hook in your introduction. And the introduction will simply introduce briefly your topic, and in this case that is your endangered animal. So your introduction will not give you all of the information. It's simply to get the person interested and also to get the person to understand, oh, this is what I'm going to read about, or this is what I'm going to listen to. Then you've got your main body. So this is similar to if you're doing a description or you're doing an essay, the main body falls into paragraphs. And similarly, in a presentation, the main body will fall into points. So your main body might have 3 or 4 different main points. So the main body 1, you might want to talk about what the animal looks like. So you're going to go through if they've got fur or if they've got scales, if they're big, if they're small, all the information about what they look like. Then you might want to talk about habitat, so where they live, and as that's quite similar to what they eat. So what they eat and where they live. So that might be your second area. The third area might be personality, family characteristics. When they say what they eat, you also want to know how they get their food. Now, I'm not going to give you anything, but this is an example. So the first body would be one, what they look like. So fur, or whatever, so how many eyes, feet, tall, small, do they stand on hind legs or forelegs? Okay, so you're going into a lot more detail in your presentation than what we do in our description. You need a lot of detail in information. As I've said before, you need to think about, imagine that you're talking to an alien who's never been to Earth before, and you're trying to explain this animal to them. You need to give them all of the possible information that you have, and you also still need to make it interesting. Finally, we have a conclusion. So once you've got all of your main points, and as I said, characteristics. Why is that not working? Don't know. You'll probably have another few areas that you need to cover, and we'll talk about that shortly. And then you've got your conclusion. So your conclusion, one, summarizes the things that you've said nice and quickly. The conclusion also gives a final interesting statement. So as this is about endangered animals, this might be, you might at the end want to say, so we should do this to save the animals, okay? So just something so that the audience walks away and they're thinking about what they've learnt from you. So the introduction and conclusion are really about influencing the audience. So we've got the hook for the introduction and just some general details, briefly introduce the subject topic. The main body gives us all of the content, tells us everything that we need to know about that animal. And your conclusion is summarizing all of the body and then making a final statement to influence the audience into one particular type of behavior. So what I'd like you to do is I want you to think of what you want to include about your animal. So here, I would like you to write a list or to snip if you wish. So as you know, remember the snipping tool. So you can write what you need to hear and then snip and send me a copy. Okay, so 5.21 is one of the first areas of your homework. So what sort of things would you like to include about your animal? Would you like to include some interesting facts? Would you like to include statistics? For instance, how many there used to be, how many there are now. Do you want to include what they look like, where they come from, where they started? Are they related to dinosaurs? All of these things are things that you might want to include. Don't worry about what order you put them in. I just want to get an idea of all the things that you think would be interesting in a presentation. I'd like you to keep in mind that the presentation will be 5 minutes long with a 3-minute discussion at the end. So you need enough information to talk for a full 5 minutes. Okay, so the next thing, first do this, make sure that you do this first. And the second thing, I want you to now organize your ideas into a general plan. So what are you going to say in the introduction? The same as what I've said here. What are you going to say in the body? And what are you going to say in the conclusion? Okay, and this is just a first attempt at this. We're going to go into further detail when I hand out the actual presentation in the next reading and writing class. Sorry, speaking and listening class, I apologize. We're also in the next speaking and listening class going to look at comparing what makes a good presentation to a bad presentation. You may think that it's a bit boring talking about an endangered animal, but I can promise you that you can make any topic interesting if you have the right presentation skills and the right presentation tools. So that's what we're going to be working on. Okay. So let's have a look at some of the main areas about an outline for your oral presentation. Okay. The body will be different according to the animal that you choose. So this is just a first example. One of the areas that you will be assessed in during your presentation is how you've actually created your plan. So I will be marking your plan as part of your oral presentation. So the plan is really important that we get this right before we create our presentation itself. The introduction, we first want to introduce yourself. Hello, my name is such and such, and I am a doctor of revolutionary science, or evolutionary rather. Give an overview of your talk. So today I'm going to be talking to you about this, including A, B, and C. Define your terms. So if you're going to talk about mammals, you need to define what a mammal is. So any scientific words that you're going to use, make sure that you define them as well. And ask the audience to focus their ideas. So this is when we sometimes make a rhetorical question, or we use something, basically this is what the book is talking about, a hook, okay? So instead of just asking the audience to focus their attention or their ideas, here is when you can make the hook to make sure that they're going to listen to you and they're going to be interested in your talk. Making sure the audience are interested in your talk also helps with your nerves. If you see that everybody likes to listen to you and are looking at you and paying attention, it actually calms you down and you become more confident. If you give a boring presentation, you'll notice that the students or people that your audience will be playing with their pens, playing with their hair, looking out the window, and that will increase your nerves and have a negative impact on your presentation. So we need to make sure that your presentation is interesting for the audience. Remember, we've got about 25 students in 10A, so we need to make sure that you're going to try and keep everybody interested in each of the 25 presentations. The next area we look at is the main body. So part one, this is what they've suggested, is that you put your description of the animal. So the definition of what your animal is. Then looking at characteristics, and they've said this is what does it look like, how big it is, does it have fur, does it have a tail, does it have 5 legs, does it have 2 legs? The habitat where it lives, and the food source is what does it eat. But again, you need to go into a decent amount of information about these to again engage the audience. I don't want someone to just say, hello, my animal is a rhinoceros, it's big, it's great, it has 4 legs, it lives in Africa, and it eats grass. That would be very simple and not at the level that you need to be giving at the moment. Part 2, you might want to talk about how endangered the animal, how endangered is this animal? So why is it endangered? How many were there? How many are there? Why is it endangered? So what's been actually happening? What are the threats for its survival? And why is it becoming extinct? And then finally, in your third main point, you might want to talk about how it can be saved, what needs to change, and how can we, people, help, okay? You don't just have to have 3 main points or 3 bodies. You may have 4 or 5 bodies. As I said, it's going to be a 5-minute discussion, 5-minute presentation. I would recommend that main body 1, 2, and 3 would be, your main body would actually be at least 1 minute, 1.5 minutes long. Your introduction and conclusion should be about 30 seconds to a minute long maximum. And then you're going to invite the audience to ask questions, which means you need to know a lot about your animal to make sure you can answer the questions that the audience is going to ask. So next we're going to look at some phrases that you should be using. I want you to have a think about what sort of signposting phrases you can use to introduce your ideas, to introduce visual aids, etc. So for instance, to start, if you're going to start with something, you might say, to begin with, or firstly. Those would be signposting. To list, again, might be firstly or then. To introduce visual aids. If you can now look over here, would be an example. To move to another topic. Alternatively, to summarize the end of your talk. In conclusion, and to finish the talk, thank you for listening. So those are just one example for each of those, but I would like to get you to do another 2 examples for each, okay? So I want 2 examples that I have not said, 2 of your own examples for here, and here, and here, and here, and here, and here. Okay? So that's all you're going to have to be doing today. As I said, I will introduce the presentation in the next class. We'll also talk about what makes a good presentation a bad presentation, and then you're going to write your description plan. I don't want that today. So just to reiterate, what we need to do today is number 1, please complete this, your brainstorm of things that you'd like to include, things that you think are really important to talk about your endangered animal. Please complete this. This is just a general idea of how can I put this presentation together? What should I do first, second, third, fourth maybe, and the conclusion. And then finally, give me some phrases that you can use for each of these items. So that's 2.23, 2.22, and 5.21. So 5.21, 5.22, and 5.23. As usual, I will be available on WeChat. It's very important that you get this through to me because we're progressing to get you ready to do your actual presentation. If you've got any questions, don't hesitate to let me know. And thank you again, Michelle, for being so courteous and helpful in downloading this and sending it out to the students. I will speak to you again in our next class. Thank you as usual and have a wonderful day.